Summer 1943. The war had consumed Europe in fire and smoke. Cities lay in ruins, skies roared with bombers, and fear was a constant companion. Yet far from the front lines, a small group of German women was about to experience something they never imagined. Captured and sent across the Atlantic to America, they expected cruelty, hunger, and humiliation. Instead, they would find something entirely foreign: food that defied their memory of rationing, kindness that felt impossible, and a freedom they had only glimpsed in whispered rumors. What awaited them behind the barbed wire would challenge everything. Lisa and Anna, among dozens of German women, stepped off the transport ship with hearts pounding. Stories of American brutality had filled their minds for months. Captivity meant suffering, starvation, and shame. But the camp that awaited them was nothing like the nightmare they had imagined. Clean wooden huts, running water, soft beds, and warm meals awaited behind the barbed wire. They had crossed the ocean expecting chains and cruelty. Instead, they were met with the unknown: hamburgers, ice cream, and bottles of fizzing Coca-Cola. Confusion, guilt, and curiosity warred inside each woman. What would they do in the face of this shock? Would they trust the Americans, or cling to the indoctrination that had shaped their lives? The first taste of freedom would not come without inner conflict, as survival now carried guilt and pleasure in equal measure. Subscribe to discover the astonishing story of how these German women POWs confronted not just captivity, but the bewildering generosity of a world they had been told was their enemy. The transport ship groaned as it cut through the gray Atlantic waves. Inside, the German women sat huddled on wooden benches, uniforms stiff, faces pale from exhaustion. Fear clung to them like a second skin. They had been told Americans were merciless, that captivity meant hunger, brutality, and humiliation. Every story whispered on the docks, every rumor carried across propaganda lines painted a dark, terrifying picture. Lisa stared out the tiny porthole at the endless water, trying to steady her racing heart. Beside her, Anna clenched her fists, jaw tight, eyes unyielding. Survival had always been measured in caution, obedience, and silence. Weeks at sea blurred together. The Atlantic stretched endlessly, gray and cold, waves smashing against the ship like reminders of a hostile world. The women endured cramped quarters, the sting of saltwater air, and the constant nausea of the rolling ship. Rumors spread among them. Murmurs of stories told by other prisoners, of women who had vanished on similar journeys. Some whispered prayers. Others stared in silence, pretending not to tremble. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, curiosity flickered, quiet and fragile, a small spark daring to question the tales of American cruelty. When the ship finally approached the coast, dawn painted the harbor in muted gold. Cranes and warehouses loomed, trucks rumbled, and soldiers shouted commands. Lisa's stomach twisted. Was this the maw of the beast they had been warned about? Guards with rifles slung casually at their sides watched every movement. The women were herded onto trucks, engines growling beneath them, carrying them inland. Dust rose like smoke around their boots, and every step deeper into America intensified the tension. The camp waited silently, rows of barbed wire looming ominously, yet its true nature remained hidden behind the gates. As the convoy stopped, the gates opened slowly. The women's hearts skipped. Inside, neat rows of wooden huts gleamed in the morning light. Windows reflected the sun. Pathways were swept. The air smelled clean, not like the stench of war. Sturdy mattresses lined the bunks, blankets folded neatly at their edges. Running water flowed from taps, and showers replaced the buckets they had dreaded. Lisa blinked in disbelief. "It's clean," she whispered, hardly daring to speak. Anna's voice cut sharply. "Don't trust it." Always a trick. Still, the evidence of normalcy pressed against every expectation they had carried. Evening arrived, and hunger gnawed at their bellies as they lined up in the mess hall. The scent of warm food hit them instantly. Metal trays bore sizzling hamburgers, juicy meat between soft buns with crisp sides of potatoes. Ice cream machines hissed steam, and tall bottles of Coca-Cola fizzed darkly. The women froze, uncertainty gripping their limbs. Could this abundance be real? Lisa reached for a bottle, trembling. The hiss as she opened it startled her. A cautious sip sent a shock through her senses. Sweet, sparkling, alive. Tears pricked her eyes. How could something so simple feel so luxurious? Around her, the women reacted in a storm of emotion. Some cried quietly, overwhelmed by relief. Others laughed nervously, unable to stop themselves from tasting. Yet Anna pushed her tray away, refusing the meal. "Poison," she hissed, to weaken us, to make us forget who we are. Lisa bit into her hamburger, savoring the richness, the warmth, the sensation of a full stomach after months of rationing and fear. Guilt twisted in her chest as she imagined her family in bombed Hamburg, scraping bread from sacks. Here, behind barbed wire, they were eating like royalty. The first night in America stretched long. The women whispered in their bunks, questioning the purpose behind such kindness. Could it be real? Or was it another weapon? A psychological trap meant to break them from the inside. Lisa stared at the wooden ceiling, heart full, body sated, mind torn. Anna's voice echoed in the darkness, a stern reminder of loyalty and identity. Yet for the first time, Lisa wondered if survival could mean more than suffering. Could warmth, food, and a moment of relief coexist with fear? She could not answer, but she could feel its pull. Days passed, and the camp rhythm began to unfold. Morning whistles called the women to rise, not with threats, but as signals for daily routines. Breakfast arrived with eggs and toast, lunch with hamburgers and potatoes, dinner with pies that melted on the tongue. Coca-Cola fizzed steadily in the background. Work was orderly, light, often sewing uniforms or tending gardens. Books lined the small library, some in German. Music drifted through the evenings from radios, sometimes transforming the mess hall into a theater of laughter and simple joy. Every day challenged the women's assumptions of captivity. Yet the inner conflict grew sharper with each passing meal. Lisa ventured closer to the kitchen, watching cooks at work, learning names, exchanging shy smiles. She tasted kindness and began to hum along with swing music from the radios. Others whispered doubts, citing ideology, reminding each other of loyalty to the Reich. Anna's presence remained a constant shadow, a voice of warning, suspicion, and pride. The mornings became a strange comfort. Lisa rose with the others, folding her blanket neatly before joining the line for breakfast. The smell of eggs, toast, and coffee was almost dizzying, a stark contrast to the thin gruel she remembered from Germany. The women moved slowly, cautious with every bite. Each morsel felt like a transgression and a relief at once. Anna watched from the corner, rigid and unyielding, her eyes scanning every movement. "Remember who you are," she murmured under her breath, a mantra against the creeping doubt. Lisa hesitated, then took another sip of coffee, tasting sweetness she had thought impossible. Lunch arrived, and the mess hall buzzed with tentative murmurs. Metal trays carried steaming hamburgers, crisp potatoes, and fresh vegetables. Coca-Cola bottles hissed as caps were pried open, the sound like fireworks to the prisoners. Some women laughed nervously, while others, like Anna, refused to touch anything, staring at the abundance as if it were a trap. Lisa bit into the burger, savoring the warmth and flavor, her senses overwhelmed. Memories of rationed bread and empty stomachs pressed against her consciousness. How could life offer such pleasure behind barbed wire? Conflicting emotions swirled, guilt, gratitude, and the faint whisper of hope. Evenings brought a different kind of revelation. The camp transformed into a theater of simple joys. Radios crackled with swing music, bright trumpets filling the wooden halls. Lisa, unable to resist, hummed softly along with the tunes, her voice gaining confidence as the days passed. Some women joined her, shy at first, then with tentative laughter. Anna's scowl never wavered. She would rise and cut through the music with harsh words, a reminder of loyalty to the Reich, of obedience and pride. Yet even her presence could not fully suppress the tiny spark of curiosity and freedom that Lisa and others began to feel. The women started noticing small gestures of kindness from the American staff. A sergeant would hand Lisa a warm roll straight from the oven, his smile genuine, not mocking. Another would ask if she needed help with sewing, or offer a simple word in German. These moments felt alien, yet comforting. Lisa began to exchange broken words with them, smiles mingling with quiet laughter. Each interaction was a revelation, a window into a world the propaganda had never allowed them to imagine. Still, she feared betrayal. Was enjoying kindness the first step toward weakness or the start of understanding? Rumors of other camps and escape attempts drifted like smoke through the barracks. Some women whispered about tunnels, about prisoners who vanished only to be hunted down in the countryside. Each story carried both fear and fascination. Lisa listened quietly, heart pounding, her curiosity battling caution. Anna's warnings were constant. "You are Germans. Never forget. Never trust." The camp's walls, though protective, felt almost fragile as the women began to understand the power of subtle freedom. It was not the clink of chains, but the absence of cruelty, the presence of choice that unsettled them most. Food became a battleground of emotion. Some women hesitated, refusing to eat, clinging to loyalty and fear. Others, like Lisa, surrendered to hunger and curiosity, tasting every new flavor with wonder. Coca-Cola, hamburgers, apple pies, they were more than sustenance. They were symbols of a world outside ideology, outside fear. Yet each bite carried the weight of home. Bombed streets, ration lines, missing family. Lisa's mind swirled with guilt and amazement, the taste of sweetness and normalcy clashing violently with memories of loss. Eating became an act of rebellion and survival simultaneously. As the days flowed into weeks, small routines anchored the women. They tended gardens, mended clothes, and cleaned their huts. Laughter grew bolder, often erupting during mealtimes or music sessions. Lisa lingered in the kitchen, learning names, observing the American staff. She discovered a strange comfort in small exchanges. A nod, a shared smile, a soft word. Yet Anna's vigilance never faded. The barracks were divided along invisible lines. Loyalty and curiosity collided. Tension simmered beneath the surface, and every act of kindness felt both dangerous and irresistible. The first real challenge came during a communal gathering. The mess hall echoed with swing music, bright and lively. Lisa hummed along, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each note. Others joined cautiously until laughter mingled with song. Anna rose abruptly. Days turned into weeks and the camp settled into a rhythm. Lisa awoke to whistles signaling the start of another day, but now the sound carried no fear, only routine. The bunks were tidy, meals predictable yet still astonishing in their abundance. Women moved through the camp with a mix of caution and curiosity. Conversations began to form, whispers turning into small exchanges. Even Anna occasionally listened, though her lips remained tightly pressed. Lisa noticed how gestures, the handing of a plate, the shared laughter over a small joke, started to form a fragile web of trust between prisoners and captors. The kitchen became Lisa's favorite place. The cooks, patient and kind, showed her the rhythm of preparation, from slicing bread to stirring sauces. She watched the steam curl from pots, smelled the aroma of sizzling meat, and felt a strange sense of belonging. Other women lingered nearby, some curious, others hesitant. Anna remained apart, her eyes sharp, observing every movement with suspicion. Yet Lisa began to learn their names, to laugh quietly at small mistakes, and to understand the gestures of kindness that had once seemed alien. Each day she tasted not only food but a new way of existing. Outside the kitchen, the gardens offered another kind of revelation. Women tended rows of vegetables, watered plants, and marveled at their growth. Life continued despite the war, despite the barbed wire. For Lisa, this work was calming, almost meditative. She could focus on the green leaves, the soil in her hands, and the sun overhead. For the first time, she felt the subtle power of contribution, of creating something living. Anna scowled at these moments, deeming them distractions. Yet even she could not completely ignore the quiet pride the women felt when vegetables flourished under their care. Friendships began to form in unexpected ways. Lisa found a kindred spirit in Marta, a younger woman who shared stories of home, laughter, and occasional tears. They spoke softly in German, sharing memories of bombed streets and rationed bread, then comparing them to the abundance in front of them now. Together, they navigated the uncertainty of trust, learning that tiny gestures, offered smiles, shared bites of food, careful encouragement, could bridge gaps once thought insurmountable. Other women observed, sometimes joining, sometimes staying silent. The barracks became a delicate ecosystem of fear, curiosity, and the tentative embrace of new possibilities. Evenings continued to surprise the prisoners. Swing music played regularly, films were screened, and moments of laughter broke through the tension. Lisa hummed along with the tunes, sometimes daring to dance small movements behind her bunk curtains. Some women joined, testing the boundaries of what was acceptable. Anna's disapproval remained fierce, her whispers sharp. But slowly the rhythm of life in the camp began to erode the rigid lines she clung to. The simple pleasures, the taste of Coca-Cola, the warmth of a hamburger, the melody of music, were transforming them in ways no propaganda could undo. Yet the shadow of war was never far. News of German defeats filtered into the camp through new arrivals, newspapers, and guarded conversations. Some women wept at the thought of relatives, others clenched fists, whispering vows of return and revenge. Lisa felt the tension within herself, torn between memories of home and the strange comfort of this unexpected world. Every bite of food, every sip of Coke carried with it both guilt and awe. Survival had become a complex negotiation, balancing human need with loyalty, fear with curiosity, and ideology with undeniable evidence of kindness. The first real test of trust arrived during a communal task. Women were asked to help prepare the hall for a small gathering, a celebration of sorts marking the nearing end of a month. Lisa hesitated at first, unsure if her efforts would be accepted or mocked. Slowly she joined, arranging chairs, polishing tables, and placing small decorations. Marta worked alongside her, laughing quietly at mistakes, while Anna observed, tension etched across her face. Yet as the hall transformed under their hands, even Anna could not deny the satisfaction that radiated from women who realized their work mattered. The gathering began with music and light refreshments. Lisa, hesitant at first, took a small plate of food, savoring the flavors without guilt for the first time. Others followed, some nervously, some with laughter. The atmosphere was fragile yet hopeful. Moments of shared smiles, whispered jokes, and soft songs created bonds that had seemed impossible mere weeks ago. Anna remained standing, arms folded, eyes sharp. But even her glare softened when she saw small gestures of care and respect between the women and the American staff. A subtle understanding began to form. Freedom could exist even here in fragments. That night, Lisa lay in her bunk, thoughts swirling. The morning light crept through the narrow windows, casting pale stripes across the wooden floor. Lisa rose from her bunk, the familiar smell of frying meat and fresh bread greeting her as she stepped into the mess hall. Her stomach growled, but her mind raced faster. Around her, whispers circled like invisible threads, pulling at loyalties and suspicions alike. Some women exchanged hesitant smiles, tasting hamburgers with wide-eyed curiosity. Others, led by Anna, watched with cold precision, refusing to touch the trays as if by denying themselves, they could deny the American world that pressed against their reality. Lisa's fingers trembled as she lifted a glass of Coca-Cola. The cold condensation slid down the bottle, sparkling in the morning sun. She hesitated, the hiss of the cap echoing in her ears, a sound that had once startled her but now felt strangely inviting. Around her, younger women began following her lead, their hands shaking as they opened bottles and tasted for the first time. Laughter, soft and uncertain, began to rise from the back of the hall. Lisa felt a surge of warmth she had not known in months. Yet the warmth was tempered by guilt, a ghost from the streets of Hamburg, the empty kitchens, the ration lines that had been her world just weeks ago. Anna's eyes burned across the room. She moved with the precision of a soldier, her hands clenched into fists. "You think this is freedom?" She spat under her breath, loud enough for a few to hear. "This is poison. They want to make you weak. Don't you dare touch it." Her words struck some women like cold water, pulling them back from the trays of burgers and bread rolls. A few timidly set their glasses down, retreating to the safety of caution. Lisa swallowed hard, feeling the tension coil inside her chest. How could something so simple, so human, spark such fear? Later, as the women filed into the yard for light exercise, Lisa lingered behind. She watched an American cook laughing with a group of prisoners, handing out small pieces of bread, joking with a warmth that seemed almost unreal. Tentatively, she approached, speaking a broken phrase she had practiced over and over. "Thank you," she whispered, her accent thick, her confidence fragile. The cook smiled, nodding simply, pointing to the loaf and gesturing her to take more. It was a gesture so ordinary, yet to Lisa it felt revolutionary. A ripple of defiance, quiet and unspoken, began to form inside her. Back in the barracks, whispers spread like wildfire. Some women had tasted more than food. They had tasted kindness, a warmth they had never expected behind barbed wire. Others recoiled, hearts pounding with suspicion. Anna cornered Lisa near the bunks later that evening, her eyes sharp as daggers. "You think smiling at them makes you free? It makes you weak," she hissed, stepping dangerously close. Lisa's hand shook, her stomach twisting with guilt. Yet she lifted her chin, meeting Anna's gaze. "Is it betrayal to live?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling yet firm. "To breathe? To find a moment of peace when everything else is gone?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the low hum of the camp lights. That night, sleep was uneasy. Lisa lay awake, staring at the wooden ceiling above. Shadows shifted as other women turned restlessly, some murmuring prayers, others whispering about hamburgers, Coca-Cola, and fleeting freedoms. The camp was alive with contradictions. Safety and fear, comfort and guilt, freedom and captivity all coexisted in the same wooden walls. Lisa's thoughts drifted to Germany. Her mother rationing bread, her little brother coughing in the cold, the bombed streets she had left behind. Yet here, warmth and kindness had carved small cracks into her armor. Days passed and a rhythm formed, fragile and tentative. Breakfasts were no longer merely meals. They were tests of courage, a choice between ideology and survival. The women navigated the invisible lines that divided them, careful of who watched, who judged. Lisa found herself lingering in the yard, speaking small words to Americans, learning gestures, feeling moments of connection that were impossible to name. Even a shared laugh over a spilled plate of scrambled eggs became a rebellion in itself, subtle yet profound. But the shadow of the outside world never fully lifted. Rumors arrived with new prisoners, trucks bringing gaunt faces, stories of defeats and retreats, of cities destroyed, of friends and family lost. The weight of reality pressed in, reminding the women that beyond the camp the war raged still. Yet inside these wooden walls a quieter war was being fought, one of hearts and minds, of curiosity and suspicion, of courage and fear. Lisa felt it in every heartbeat, every sip of Coke, every bite of hamburger, every whisper of a forbidden word in broken English. Even as laughter began to echo, bright and uncertain, Anna remained rigid, her pride unbroken. She watched Lisa, watched the others, her face a mask of cold resolve. Yet the camp's mornings had settled into a cautious rhythm, yet the air still hummed with tension. Lisa walked through the yard, hands folded, eyes scanning the faces around her. Some women carried the weight of suspicion openly, refusing to acknowledge the strange kindness they had tasted. Others, like Lisa, allowed themselves moments of curiosity and connection, small rebellions in the face of rigid ideology. Even the simplest gestures, a shared loaf of bread, a smile, a question asked in broken English, became acts of quiet courage. Each day, the invisible lines between loyalty and humanity blurred ever so slightly. Lisa lingered near the kitchen that afternoon, watching an American sergeant toss a ball to a group of younger prisoners. He laughed freely, the sound carrying across the yard. For a moment, Lisa almost forgot where she was. Her heart yearned to reach across, to be part of this warmth. Yet guilt gnawed at her like a persistent shadow. Memories of bombed streets, of mothers rationing scraps, of brothers shivering in the cold haunted her relentlessly. Could she accept joy while the world she loved crumbled beyond the barbed wire? The question would not leave her. Meanwhile, Anna prowled the barracks with a hawk-like vigilance. Every smile, every act of engagement with Americans she catalogued as proof of weakness. She cornered young women in hushed whispers, reminding them of the Reich, of duty, of honor. "Do you forget what we have lost?" she hissed to one trembling girl. "Do you think this laughter makes you free? It makes you traitors." Her voice, sharp and unyielding, split the room like a knife. Yet even Anna could not entirely escape the strange reality around her. The warm beds, the clean showers, the scent of bread baking, the fizz of Coca-Cola. One afternoon, the camp organized a small activity in the mess hall. An American officer brought out a phonograph, the first music many of the women had heard in months that wasn't march or propaganda. The upbeat swing melodies filled the hall, trumpets blaring, rhythms lively and infectious. Lisa's lips moved first, humming a tune she barely recognized. The others paused, some uncertain, some emboldened, until soft voices joined in. Slowly, hesitant laughter followed. The music was dangerous in its simplicity, threatening the invisible walls of fear that had confined them. Anna's scowl darkened, her fists clenching. She strode into the room, voice cutting through the melody. "Do you hear yourselves? Singing their songs? Laughing with the enemy?" Her anger ricocheted through the hall and the women froze. Lisa's heart pounded, but she did not stop. Instead, she looked around, seeing curiosity and joy flicker in others' eyes. For a fleeting moment, the camp felt alive. Not a prison, but a fragile world where humanity could survive despite war. The days blurred, and Lisa discovered a quiet courage in small interactions. She helped a younger girl adjust a uniform, offered guidance to those struggling with English phrases, and lingered near the kitchen during meal preparations. A sergeant, noticing her efforts, handed her a warm roll fresh from the oven, smiling without mockery. It was a simple act, yet to Lisa it felt revolutionary. Even the faintest human connection was a weapon against fear. The camp's invisible walls seemed to soften with each shared meal, each laugh, each cautious conversation. Yet fear never left entirely. Rumors drifted from the newest arrivals. Stories of escapes, of camps in other states, of prisoners who vanished into the countryside only to be recaptured. Outside, Germany was burning, cities destroyed, families scattered. Inside, loyalty to the Reich fought with the quiet stirrings of curiosity and acceptance. Lisa felt torn. How could she reconcile the care she received with the horrors waiting at home? Could survival mean both gratitude and guilt? The camp's routines were comforting, yet they carried a subtle weight. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, every meal a reminder of abundance, every sip of Coca-Cola a spark of unease. Anna's vigilance reminded all that indulgence could be betrayal. But Lisa learned to navigate the delicate balance, tasting moments of joy while never fully forgetting the outside world. The camp was both sanctuary and test, each day a silent negotiation between fear and hope, duty and desire, ideology and humanity. By the 5th week, bonds began forming quietly. Lisa exchanged shy smiles with women who had once scorned laughter. Some began mimicking the sergeant's gentle gestures, learning names, sharing stories in broken English. Even Anna, though rigid, could not prevent subtle cracks in the armor. Glances lingered, hands hesitated, curiosity stirred. The war outside remained ruthless, but inside, a fragile, unspoken rebellion was taking shape, one rooted not in weapons, but in simple acts of shared humanity. The camp had grown quieter, almost serene, but beneath the calm, tension lingered like an uninvited shadow. Lisa awoke to the soft clatter of boots on wooden floors, the rhythmic hum of daily routine. Yet this morning felt different. News had reached the women. Arrangements were underway for repatriation. Germany, ruined, devastated, uncertain, awaited. For some, it was a beacon of hope. For others, a source of dread. Lisa felt a storm of emotions. Relief, fear, guilt, and longing all clashed within her chest. She clutched the edge of her bunk, thinking of the meal she had eaten, the laughter shared, and the bitter taste of survival in a world that was still broken. Anna moved through the barracks like a shadow, her face a mask of defiance. She had refused every bite of American abundance, every sip of Coca-Cola, and every trace of comfort offered. Now, with the news of departure, her pride hardened further. She gathered a small group of women around her, whispering warnings, reminding them of duty, honor, and the sacrifices of their families. "Do not let this poison seduce you," she hissed. "You think warmth can erase what we have lost? You will return to a Germany that needs soldiers, not traitors." Her voice carried authority, fear, and the unbroken thread of ideology. Lisa, however, found herself torn. Each memory of kindness, each small bond formed within the camp, clashed violently with the world she had left behind. The first sip of Coca-Cola, the first bite of a warm hamburger, the laughter that had once seemed forbidden, all haunted her. She had learned the fragility of human connection, the subtle power of compassion. Could she walk away from this newfound understanding of humanity? Could she return to a place where survival meant fear and ration lines? These questions gnawed at her. In the yard, the women lined up for their final roll call. Guards moved among them, crisp and professional, yet lacking the severity Lisa had once feared. The rhythm of marching feet echoed faintly, mingling with the morning bird song. A sergeant approached, handing out small packages of food for the journey. Warm bread, cold cuts, and a bottle of Coca-Cola were offered to each woman. Some accepted with trembling hands. Others, like Anna, refused outright. Lisa held her bottle tightly, feeling the weight of both memory and choice. It was more than a drink. It was the embodiment of the conflict between fear, duty, and simple humanity. The trucks arrived at noon. Engines roared, dust rising around their wheels. Women were guided carefully, some reluctant, some hesitant. Lisa walked slowly, her heart pounding. She looked back once, seeing the wooden barracks, the mess hall where laughter had broken the silence, the kitchen where she had first dared to connect. She wanted to remember everything, the smells, the tastes, the fleeting joy, but also feared she would forget. swallowed by the chaos awaiting her in Germany. Inside the truck, the air was thick with emotion. Some women whispered prayers. Others shared nervous laughter. Lisa sat beside a younger girl who clutched a warm roll, her eyes wide with both awe and confusion. For a moment, they exchanged a quiet smile, an unspoken acknowledgement of shared experience. Even Anna, seated rigidly, cast fleeting glances at the women who had embraced moments of joy, though she refused to participate. The ride toward the unknown stretched endlessly, each mile amplifying the swirl of conflicting emotions. As the American countryside faded behind them, the women reflected on the paradox of captivity. They had entered the camp expecting cruelty, yet found warmth. They had feared humiliation, only to encounter respect. The small acts of kindness, a shared smile, a warm meal, a bottle of Coca-Cola had left indelible marks on their hearts. And yet, the weight of war, the knowledge of destruction back home, and the demands of duty remained. For Lisa, the journey was more than physical. It was an inner pilgrimage from fear and suspicion toward a fragile understanding of humanity. Finally, as the trucks approached the camp's exit and the first glimpses of the wider world appeared, Lisa raised her Coca-Cola bottle in a quiet gesture of farewell. It was a toast to survival, to memory, and to the strange kindness that had transformed captivity into something resembling life. Anna remained silent, arms folded, eyes fixed ahead, her pride intact yet touched by the faintest tremor of doubt. The women, each carrying fragments of the camp within them, stepped into the unknown. War had shaped them, but within barbed wire they had discovered resilience, compassion, and the quiet courage to embrace life even amidst devastation. The road stretched ahead, uncertain and daunting. Yet for Lisa, the taste of warmth, laughter, and Coca-Cola lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest chapters of history, humanity could survive. Behind them, the camp stood silent, a testament to unexpected kindness and the enduring power of human connection. And for a fleeting moment, war's shadow lifted, revealing not just prisoners but people capable of hope, choice, and the quiet act of living.